The title of this podcast is Be a Real Model, Not a Role Model. This is a quote that I heard at a well-being conference last week. And the person who shared the quote during her presentation was Terry Pipe. And she is a healthcare professional. She was a nurse for decades. And she started to work and do research in the mindfulness and well-being space at Arizona State University. Since then, she has been recruited to lead a class of freshmen at the University of Wisconsin. And what's interesting about her work is that it is powerful and significant and rooted in all the things that resonate with me as it relates to the practice. And when as she was describing the course, and that's an elective course for freshmen, I assumed that maybe there were 10 people that would be in her class. But when she showed a photo from the class, it was a packed, packed classroom. It reminds me of when I first went to ASU as an engineering student 30 years ago, and I was in the physics class. And there were over 150 people in this physics class. And that's what that class looked like. And the difference was in my physics class, nobody was smiling. But in this class, people were smiling, they were engaged, they were laughing in the photo. So I was like, man, what a treat to be leading that class as well as being a student in the class. But one of the things that her point was, is that, you know, as human beings who are working to contribute kindness and open-heartedness and love in the world, consider being a real model as opposed to a role model. And what I love about that is that being a real model requires vulnerability. And up until the practice some 10 years ago, my vulnerability was conditional. I felt that I could be vulnerable to certain people, or if it was a certain situation that I could be vulnerable with. But most often, if you were vulnerable with me first. And since then, I've learned to lean in and to lead with vulnerability. So most people know me pretty well. I mean, and that is not by accident. That is by design. The more and more I can be honest about where I am, what I'm working on, my shortcomings and growth opportunities, the more I think it increases the chances for me to grow. When I'm not being vulnerable, I'm often trying to hide something. I'm trying to look good, avoid looking bad. And that is a recipe for not working on the things that are holding you back. In my case, holding me back. So I invite you to consider in all the spaces that you show up, whether it's with your family, your significant other, your children, your parents, your friends, your community, work, whatever it is, be a real model, lead with vulnerability. At Mayo Clinic, one of the things that I have an opportunity to do is to encourage and model vulnerability for leaders. And it's interesting how many leaders struggle with doing this, but it's not a surprise because we aren't taught to be vulnerable. But I asked them in every case, have you ever heard a leader be vulnerable and their standing in the eyes of others is diminished? And it doesn't happen. When an individual is being authentic and vulnerable and sharing about themselves, not about others, but about themselves, it's really endearing. It is inspiring and it resonates deeply. And it creates an opening within each of us to do the same. So I encourage you to lead with vulnerability and be a real model as opposed to aspiring to be a role model. The role model, that requires perfection. And that's not within uh, a human being's ability. However, vulnerability, oh, that is the being part of our humanness.